The Americans with Disabilities Act provides protections for qualified individuals with disabilities, specifically when it comes to employment. As an employee, it is important for you to be aware of the protections provided under the ADA, regardless of whether you have a disability, as anyone can develop a disability at any point in life. Therefore, this video will start by providing you with a brief overview of the ADA, including who it applies to, what protections it provides, and how to request assistance from your employer if the need ever arises. This video will then review general guidelines to keep in mind when you're working with or serving individuals with different types of disabilities. As work environments continue to become more diverse, it is important to acknowledge how stereotypes affect our interactions with coworkers and customers alike. Individuals with disabilities are no exception, and it is important to ensure that you are treating individuals with disabilities with the dignity and respect they deserve. So, how do you know if you qualify to be protected under the ADA? Simple. You're protected if you meet these two items. A, you have a physical or mental impairment that limits one or more major life activities. And B, you meet all skill, experience, education, and other job-related requirements and can perform the essential functions of the job, either with or without reasonable accommodation. The ADA provides two main protections to individuals with disabilities. First, it prohibits employers from discriminating against individuals on the basis of their disabilities in all aspects of employment. This includes job application procedures, hiring, advancement discharge, compensation, job training, and more. Second, it requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations to individuals with disabilities unless the accommodations would impose undue hardship on the employer. Under the ADA, the term reasonable accommodation means any modification or adjustment made to a work environment to allow an individual with a disability to participate in the application process, perform the essential job functions, or enjoy equal benefits and privileges of employment. If you have a disability that is impacting your job or to fully participate in employment, you may be in need of a reasonable accommodation. You should follow your employer's ADA policy in requesting an accommodation. But here are a few things to keep in mind. 1. You are responsible for requesting an accommodation, and you can make this request at any time during the application process or during employment. And 2. Although you do not need to specifically reference the ADA or the phrase reasonable accommodation, it may be helpful to do so. If your employer does not have an ADA policy, talk to your supervisor or the Human Resources Department about your need for an accommodation. Statistics indicate that as many as 1 in 5 adults over the age of 18 who live in the United States have a disability. Chances are most people will encounter a coworker, supervisor, or customer with a disability in the workplace. So the U.S. Department of Labor's Job Accommodation Network has created a list of etiquette guidelines to keep in mind when interacting with individuals with disabilities in the workplace. This list is not comprehensive, but serves as a starting point for creating an inclusive work environment. Individuals with mobility impairments. Do not touch or lean on a wheelchair, move a person's walker or cane without being asked, or pet or distract a service animal without asking first. A wheelchair, mobility aid, or service animal is part of an individual's personal space, an extension of that individual. Ask whether a person needs assistance before you help. Sit down when speaking for more than a few minutes with a person who uses a wheelchair or other device. Use people-first language. This means the focus should be on the person, not his or her disability. For example, use language such as person who uses a wheelchair, rather than wheelchair-bound or confined to a wheelchair. Individuals with vision impairments. Verbally greet and identify yourself before extending your hand to greet a person who is blind. Use the same courtesy when entering or leaving a room, or saying goodbye when ending a conversation. Offer your arm instead of taking the arm of a person who is blind or visually impaired when guiding the person. As you walk, tell the person where you are going, make note of steps or slopes, and point out opening doors or other obstacles. Do not pet or distract a guide dog. When walking alongside someone who is using a guide dog, walk on the side opposite the animal. Offer to read written information when applicable. Individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Be aware that individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing communicate in various ways. Pay attention to cues such as whether the person uses sign language, is reading lips, writing, or gesturing. Do not turn your head, walk away, or obstruct the view of your mouth when communicating with someone who is reading lips. Maintain eye contact and direct your communication to the person who is deaf when using a sign language interpreter. Speak using a normal tone of voice unless asked to raise your voice, and rephrase rather than repeat the same words if you are not understood. Get the attention of a person who is deaf or hard of hearing before you start speaking. Individuals with cognitive impairments. Do not assume that because someone has a cognitive impairment, such as a learning disability, that he or she has below average intelligence. Ask the person if he or she prefers verbal, written, or hands-on instruction, or a combination of methods in work-related situations. For example, if providing verbal instructions, it may be helpful to follow up with an email that clarifies your request. Treat the individual as an adult. Speak directly to the individual rather than his or her companion, and use words and phrases according to his or her level of complexity. Be patient. Allow the individual time to think and answer questions independently. Ultimately, the most important thing to remember is to treat people with disabilities with dignity and respect, just as you would any coworker, customer, or other individual you come in contact with on the job. For questions, review your employer's ADA guidelines or ask your supervisor or HR representative. For additional information, visit askjan.org.